Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The June 9th, 2022 meeting of the Anne Arundel County Council is now in session. Today we will continue with deliberations on the proposed FY23 budget for Anne Arundel County. We will start with council amendments to the budget, after which we will take a recess and then come back together to receive supplemental budget requests from the administration. At this time, please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I am leading the invocation today. As we begin our deliberations on the budget for the Anne Arundel County, for all our residents in Anne Arundel County, I just ask that we go forward with wisdom and knowledge and patience and understanding and a tone of cooperativism as we work together. And now join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there any item any council member would like to place on the agenda?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Not an agenda item, but just wanted to make a brief announcement. I do have a high school graduation at 1:30 this afternoon for Northeast High School that's in my district. So depending on the timing of the supplemental budget, I may or may not be here. I just wanted to disclose that in case anyone is watching publicly. And if I'm not here for the supplemental budget, that's the reason why. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, may I have a motion that the partial reading of any bill, resolution, amendment to a bill or resolution, or minutes constitutes the reading of the whole?
So moved, Allison Pickard.
Second, Councilman Peruski.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 37-22.
Just one moment, please. My computer's not cooperating. Bill number 3722, an ordinance concerning annual budget and appropriation ordinance of Anne Arundel County.
Is there any discussion at this time from my colleagues? That's almost a funny question to ask because surely there will be discussion. At this time, is there a motion to block a number of amendments that we have today? I request a motion to block amendments number 1 through 40.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Councilman Peruski.
All right. Are there any amendments that anyone wishes to hold aside? All right. Hearing none, we will block amendments number 1 through 40. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we do need to vote. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Volke.
Aye.
Mr. Peruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacey.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Ms. Radvian.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion to block amendment numbers 1 through 40 has been adopted.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendments number 1 through 40.
Amendment number 1 reduces contractual services by $1,119,800 for operating equipment services based on FY22 third and fourth quarter state voting system billings that will be charged to FY22 for the gubernatorial primary election and legal notices based on election ballot specimens that have already been ordered and will be paid for in FY22 for the gubernatorial primary election. Reduces supplies and materials by $25,000 for public information mailing costs based on election ballot specimens that have already been paid related to the gubernatorial primary election. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Amendment number 2 reduces personal services by $15,000 for contractual pay based on expenditure history. Amendment number 3 reduces contractual services by $25,000 for financial audit services based on expenditure history. Amendment number 4 reduces contractual services by $155,000 for consultants to eliminate duplicate funds for expenses related to costs and fees for annual bond sale activity and debt service by $85,000 for other costs of issuance related to debt service based on support that has substantiated a budget estimate less than the proposed budget request. Amendment number 5 reduces contractual services by $1,400 for lease rate TAC replacement based on the amount being requested in error. Amendment number 6 reduces personal services by $16,200 based on the special pays budget included in error. Amendment number 7 reduces personal services by $85,000 for salaries and wages to bring 6 new positions to their applicable starting salary to be consistent with the county's practice of budgeting for new positions and special pays, to remove excess funds based on the support provided. Reduces contractual services by $40,000 for other professional services based on lack of support to substantiate the increased need. Amendment number 8 reduces contractual services by $30,000 for other services based on expenditure history plus inflation. Amendment number 9 reduces personal services by $182,500 for contractual pay in the Adult Services Bureau and the Family and Youth Services Bureau based on historical expenditures and failing to substantiate the full budget request. Amendment number 10 reduces supplies and materials by $15,000 for other supplies and materials based on expenditure history plus inflation. Amendment number 11 reduces contractual services by $100,000 for utility, water, and sewer purchases based on duplicate budget for unanticipated needs. Amendment number 12 reduces contractual services by $180,000 for consultants to eliminate duplicate funds, for expenses related to costs and fees for annual bond sale activity and debt service by $135,000, for other cost of issue to eliminate the excess amount in the budget estimate based on the support provided by the Office of Finance while allowing for inflation. Amendment number 13 reduces capital outlay by $28,000 for automotive equipment for including an already budgeted and encumbered replacement vehicle. Amendment number 14, prior council approval, reduces prior approved water bonds by $1 million. Amendment number 15, prior council approval, reduces prior approved water bonds by $200,000. Amendment number 16, prior council approval, reduces prior approved wastewater bonds by an additional $114,000. Amendment number 17, capital budget, deletes $536,000 of FY23 wastewater bonds. Amendment number 18, prior council approval, reduces prior approved bonds by $1 million. Amendment number 19, capital budget, reduces FY23 bonds by $357,000. Amendment number 20, capital budget, increases FY23 other state grants by $200,000 and increases FY23 Laurel Racetrack by $49,906. Amendment number 21, capital budget, increases FY23 other state grants by $2,600,000. Amendment number 22, capital budget, reduces FY23 PPI bonds by $373,000 and deletes $355,000 of FY23 PAYGO. Amendment number 23, capital program, reduces PPI bonds by $114,000 in the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. Amendment number 24, capital program, reduces bonds by $957,000 in the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025, and reduces highway impact fees District 2 by $83,000 in the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025. Amendment number 25, capital budget, reduces FY23 bonds by $50,000. Amendment number 26, prior council approval, reduces prior approved bonds by $50,000. Amendment number 27, capital budget, reduces FY23 bonds by $45,000. Amendment number 28, capital budget, reduces FY23 bonds by $100,000. Amendment number 29, prior council approval, reduces prior approved bonds by $215,000. Amendment number 30, capital budget, reduces FY23 bonds by $45,000. Amendment number 31, capital budget, reduces FY23 bonds by $500,000. Amendment number 32, capital program, increases FY24 bonds by $500,000. Amendment number 33, prior council approval, reduces prior approved bonds by $500,000 and prior approved other federal grants by $800,000. Amendment number 34, capital budget, reduces FY23 bonds by $76,000. Amendment number 35, capital budget, deletes $19,000 of FY23 bonds. Amendment number 36, prior council approval, reduces prior approved WPRF bonds by $70,000. Amendment number 37, prior council approval, reduces prior approved WPRF bonds by $115,000. Amendment number 38, prior council approval, reduces prior approved WPRF bonds by $195,000. Amendment number 39, prior council approval, reduces prior approved WPRF bonds by $50,000. And finally, amendment number 40, prior council approval, reduces prior approved WPRF bonds by an additional $105,000.
All right. Is there a motion to adopt amendments 1 through 40 as a block?
Motion to adopt, Councilman Persky.
Second.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to make a statement on this group of amendments? Or the administration?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumar, Budget Officer. Administration has no opposition to this block.
Thank you. And just for clarification for those that are watching, these amendments reflect cuts that have been identified by our county auditor and our county auditor's office through extensive work reviewing the proposed budget and identify savings and efficiencies, things that may have been duplicated unintentionally because they were accounted for in multiple places. So these were all things agreed upon between the council and the administration, and that's just to help folks in the audience understand what that block was all about and why we're cutting things that might sound quite important. All right, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendments number 1 through 40.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment numbers 1 through 40 have been adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to a number of additional individual amendments. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 41.
Amendment number 41 reduces contractual services by $40,000 for water and sewer based on expenditure history plus inflation, weather volatility, and estimated costs for newly added locations.
Ms. Fiedler and Ms. Hare, this is your amendment. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So this came out of the auditor's rebuttal to the administration's rebuttal. Admin's rebuttal was that several new buildings were being added, and the exact usage was unknown. The rebuttal to that was that those added buildings were taken into account, and that some of them were going to be occupied for only part of a year, and I felt that this was a fair cut to make.
Mr. Trumbauer, would you like to respond on behalf of the administration?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumar, Budget Officer. If we were not about to take a transfer of a 500-acre Crownsville property, we might be okay with this cut, but quite frankly, there's so much uncertainty there with that utility system that we don't want to take any additional funds away from central services at this time. So we would appreciate the council rejecting this cut, keeping these funds in there so that we may properly address the water and sewer utility needs for all of our properties, including the presumption that we will take over Crownsville. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. When you put this budget together and you went back and forth with the auditor, did you give the auditor that specific information about Crownsville? Because I know that that's been ongoing for a bit, and the rebuttal that you guys had before was just, hey, we've got new buildings that have older infrastructure, and the auditor included in her revision, in her estimates, she took into account all of those older buildings, new buildings coming on, older infrastructure, all of that other stuff.
Sure. So I'm not disputing the auditor's analysis of the expenditure history and all of that. What I'm saying is that there's a big unknown with the water and sewer utility system in Crownsville. We think that there's some leaks. We think that there's some issues. We're going to work to address those, but what we've gotten from the state is estimates, and we've put our best estimate together. But I'm nervous about it, and I would like to keep this money in because I think it will help offset any surprises we find in Crownsville. So I just want to be clear, we're not disputing the auditor's assessment. We're saying, please leave the money in because we're getting this big unknown 500-acre property. So that's what I'm asking the council to use its judgment and keep this funding in. That's my position.
Sure. May I ask a quick follow-up? I think maybe I phrased it poorly.
Go ahead.
So were the estimates for Crownsville included when you had your discussions with the auditor?
I think so. Maybe the auditor can understand your question better than I am understanding it.
Michelle Belair, County Auditor. I think there's kind of two pieces that we're talking about. There was the presentation of information for the estimate for that property.
Okay.
But then it sounds like there's additional concern about these unknown pieces. So that information, I think if it's specific to water and sewer, is new to this object code kind of discussion. I think what we talked about at a high level is an overall concern for the pieces embedded for this property as a whole.
Sure.
Kind of across the department, which
Okay.
is not necessarily considered in here because we would view that as more of a kind of contingency type situation.
Right. Okay, perfect. I understand. Thank you so much.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have a question, but I guess as a point of order, are we going to move and second this amendment? Has that happened?
We have not, but thank you for
Okay, sure.
raising that.
Yep.
If we'd like to do that at this time, then we can do that and then continue our discussion. Is there a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt, Fiedler.
Is there a second?
Hare, second.
Thank you very much. All right.
May I ask my question?
Yes,
Thank
go
you.
ahead, Mr. Volkey.
Appreciate it. All right, Madam Auditor, I think this is for you. So sometimes when we talk about budget cuts and the things that are recommended by the auditor's office, they're referred to as sort of clean cuts, where it's very obvious this should be cut. Sometimes it's a little more discretionary. Where does this cut fall in terms of the level of detail that the auditor's office had in making the initial recommendation and then following the administration's rebuttal? Where is the auditor's office on this?
Michelle Belair, County Auditor. I think that this is one of those situations where for the amount of the recommendation, in looking at this object code, this is what I would consider a clean cut in terms of the support provided. If there are specific concerns about the limitations of the existing infrastructure, that I can see would be difficult to quantify, and when you're looking at $40,000, I think that one of the things we struggled with this property in general is how to estimate what the expected kind of additional cost will be. So there was a section reflected in kind of the overall presentation where we showed what was included, but that was difficult to substantiate, I think, because there were estimates used and it's limited by information from the state and this unknown. But I think the way that we handled unknowns is that those are usually things that would then come back to the council to utilize contingency if there were things that were previously unidentified.
Ma'am.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Trumbauer.
Sure, Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. Again, I'll just reiterate, we'd ask you to reject this cut, and what we do with all of the recommended cuts is we touch base with our directors, and Director Christine Anderson would not like this cut. And I think that the Office of Central Services does a lot of work. It's a lot of unsung work, and I think we're all a little bit anxious about the exciting yet unknown acquisition of the Crownsville Center. So you guys can take this, but I would ask you not to. I'd ask you to give us a little bit of a buffer because, quite frankly, we have taken over several additional buildings, and we're starting up the Severn Center and all kinds of new things. So although we did put together our best estimates, they could be more, and we would not like to lose $40,000 in this object. So.
I'm not sure who is first. Ms. Pickard.
I just wanted to, for all those watching at home, we're talking about a $40,000 cut in a line item of the budget that's over $14 million. So I think well, that's it.
Ms. Lacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking of, it's $40,000. I think the auditor's rationale is the stronger one in this case. Whatever we find, I'm confident we're going to end up paying for to fix, and I'd rather, and I think most of the council in general has supported, when we get more information, then we're happy to fund it, but we tend to be reluctant to fund something that we don't feel we have enough information about. So I'm going to support this cut.
All right, seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 41.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Nay.
4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. Amendment number 41 has been adopted.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm going to be withdrawing amendment number 42.
Thank you. All right, moving on then to amendment number 43, as amendment number 42 has been withdrawn. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 43.
Amendment number 43 reduces personal services by $233,500 for contractual pay in the Adult Services Bureau and the Family and Youth Services Bureau based on historical expenditures and failing to substantiate the full budget request for special pays in the Family and Youth Services Bureau based on historical expenditures.
Thank you. Again, this is Ms. Fiedler and Ms. Hare's amendment. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. I really felt that the audit staff put together a strong rebuttal to the rebuttal. You'll notice a theme here. In 2019, the highest expenditure for salaries was $32,400. The proposed cut by the audit office and Madam Auditor, which was taking into account the highest, but also historical changes, and there was no substantiation, at least in my opinion. That's why this is being brought forward. And so I motion to move this amendment forward.
Hare, second.
Thank you. At this time, Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So we did agree to a partial cut during rebuttal day, or during auditor day, sorry. And what our understanding is this funding pays for salaries for state-filled positions. So these are filled positions. This reduction would actually cut salaries for current employees. So we ask the council to please reject this cut.
I'm not sure who is first. Ms. Fiedler.
I'll yield to my colleague.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. Mr. Trumbauer, can you help explain how it would cut salaries? Because if Madam Auditor has looked at it and historical spending is underutilizing this fund, and there doesn't seem to be evidence of new positions or expansion of something that at least has gone on in the back and forth of information during the budget discussions, how is it that bringing a dollar value in line with historical expenditures is going to cut somebody's salary?
So thank you, Council Member. So I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because I haven't seen the rebuttal to the rebuttal. So if there was additional information that you all got, I have not seen that. But what I can do is I can ask our budget analyst who handles this department to come down, and she may have more particular information. But I can't respond to something that I haven't seen that rebuttal.
Well, so maybe then it's just that historical spending is much less than what's currently budgeted for. So if there's not a plan to expand or, new positions or things like that, if we've got the allocated money for the positions that are already there. I don't understand why cutting the excess is going to cut somebody's salary.
So when this was originally proposed as a cut, we discussed with the department. They initially opposed the entire cut, and we work with them based on the auditor's findings, and we agreed to that partial cut. I think we met you all in the middle to acknowledge that there was some room there, but they were adamant that taking this entire cut would have an impact on their operations and their current salary. So I can tell you that. If there's anything more that's particular, perhaps one of my budget analysts is coming down right now, but that's the rationale I would give you. I mean, this is the Department of Social Services. You all know the good work that they do. It's not a large budget. They don't have a whole lot of funding over there, so I think this cut would impact what they're able to deliver.
Okay.
I'm not seeing anything in my notifications that anyone's heading down, so I'll just rest on that.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we get that person down here from your staff, whoever? would be
I've
able to
just
speak to it?
said out into the microphone, which they're listening to, I'd like them to come down, and they're not here. So here's, if you'll
How do we
indulge me.
summons this person?
One second, yeah. I think there's probably, we're just going to rest on my comments. But again, we don't have the director, Carnitra, down here, and all I can tell you is what we discussed during the original recommendation. And we agreed to that partial cut, which we thought was a fair compromise.
Your light's still up.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Go ahead, Mr. Volkey.
I don't want to unfairly cut something or unfairly not cut something. I want to hear more information, if we could, potentially from whoever your budget person is that handles this and works closely with social services. So if it's possible that we could get them down here and hear that, I'd appreciate it. In the meantime, if we want to do other amendments and then come back to this one, I don't know if there's a way to table it or not.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I think we can do a motion to hold the vote on amendment number
There we go.
43 until the end of all the other amendments.
We may not need to do that.
Here comes the brains behind the operation. Let's see what Mr. Turow has to say. Would you mind joining us, Mr. Turow?
Mr. Turow, you have the floor. Thank you very much for coming down.
Hi, Stephen Tarou from the Budget Office. A little out of breath from ran down. It's fine. So I think it's just really a matter of difference in timing of when we've looked at what state positions are to be filled or information that we've gotten from the departments. And our historical analysis is that they're going to fill more of those than they have historically due to some salary enhancements that were done in social services and just really the history. So I think we've taken a more optimistic approach on the filling of those positions versus kind of how history has been.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I was just going to ask, Madam Auditor, could you just refresh, do you happen to know kind of the historical numbers on hand so we could have a comparison?
Sure. Michelle Belair, County Auditor. So for this particular category, it's special pays, so it's used to supplement pay for state employees. It's not one of the ones that's more directly linked to their pay. So the information about recruiting or intentions for additional hiring is new based on the responses that we received. But for this particular object, the actual costs have not crossed $40,000, even though the FY22 budget totaled $101,500. So this is one of those instances where the budget has stayed consistent. It decreased this year to $94,500, but the actual spend is significantly lower. So we included a little bit of additional funding to move the proposed budget to $44,500. That's the kind of logic behind the recommendation.
So if I understand that correctly, even with your proposed cut, it's still 10% higher, at least more than 10% higher than any of their historical spending?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you. Mr. Theroux, thank you for coming down and running, and I appreciate that. We were trying to buy you time to get here. So what is it that you said you've gotten new information from the state that suggests that these positions may be filled, which is the reason for your optimism? Can you share any more detail on what that information is vis-a-vis what we're hearing from the auditor? What I'm trying to do is reconcile these two different positions, and I'd like to have some data as opposed to just optimism. So.
Sure. So Mr. Stephen Theroux from the Budget Office. So one of the other things that we do look at is kind of the object as a whole. So when you kind of look at a silo at the special pays line item, like the auditor has done, which is a great analysis, one of the things you miss is kind of all of personal services as a whole, which is some of the ways that we look at it in the budget office. So maybe they're underspent in special pays, but they've got more contractual pay to backfill that, for example, because they still need the number of people it is to get the job done. So I will say in recent history, when we look back at specifically at social services in the last year or two, kind of through the pandemic, their spending was down. So I think the other side of that coin is also, coming out of the pandemic, getting back to full-time services and all of that social services needs to do. We, again, I don't have the hard data, but we took a little bit more of an optimistic approach. So if you went back pre-pandemic, the amount of room that they had in the object personal services, this would get them very close to not being able to fully fulfill those duties.
All right, seeing no additional lights,
Madam
Matt.
Chair.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
I
Go
have
ahead,
another
Mr. Volke. Go ahead.
Madam Auditor, based on what Mr. Theroux said, can you in any way agree, disagree, corroborate that this would get us back to this pre-pandemic spending level? I guess we're looking at FY20 budget is probably we have to look at to see pre-pandemic.
Right. Michelle Belair, County Auditor. I think that the recommendations that we made with the information provided at the time were larger than the recommended, the admin agrees amounts. But the information about the increased hiring would impact that. Again, it can be difficult looking at each object for much larger budgets as a whole, but this is an area where we saw consistent spending below the budgeted amount and additional kind of room within the current spending levels where the amounts requested are not being reached. So that was the basis of our recommendations, specifically with the amounts accepted as admin agreed and the idea that there's increased hiring. We don't necessarily have information to support really either side, because we just have this idea that they're going to be hiring more and then the information that we analyzed. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a brief follow-up. So I guess really the question I'm trying to get to is, if we go back to FY20, before this global pandemic, COVID-19, all that, Mr. Theroux has said that this level of spending would have been more consistent with what we were seeing before the last two budgets. Is that accurate from your point of view or not?
I can try and pull up more detail to
That's
look at that as a whole. The idea would be that when we made the initial recommendations, we would absolutely have considered FY20 for personal services as a whole.
Okay.
And usually an amount of increase for the idea that salaries are increasing and that there may be additional hiring.
Ms. Hare.
I think, actually, Madam Auditor just answered my question. I was going to say, did you look at specifically the spending in FY20 when you made your analysis? But I think the answer is yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 43.
Mr. Volke?
Nay.
Mr. Pruski?
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Nay.
Ms. Pickard?
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian?
Nay.
2 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. Amendment number 43 has been defeated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 44.
Amendment number 44 reduces personal services by $485,000 for turnover based on historic turnover percentage and contractual services by $170,000 for laboratory testing based on actual costs, providing new testing and sampling and inflation, and for utility water and sewer purchases based on duplicate budget for unanticipated needs.
Once again, this is Ms. Fiedler and Ms. Hare's amendment. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So this is also a result of the auditor's feedback from the rebuttal. They pointed out that they did actually, the audit staff did actually consider the lowest percentage in turnover in the past 4 years. In the past 3 years, they've seen close to 7 to 8% turnover, but the recommendation is only to bring it to 5%. The current budget assumes 3.9% turnover. I thought that this was a valid argument and had substantiation, and I move to adopt.
Hare, second.
Thank you. And Mr. Trumbauer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So Department of Public Works strongly opposes this. They say that they absolutely cannot take this $485,000 decrease to turnover. When the Budget Office does its calculations for each department, we do a calculation and a model of the appropriate turnover rate. And we stand by that analysis, and we believe that the number in the budget is correct. Just as additional context, there is, for the laboratory testing services, there is new regulatory requirements from the Department of the Environment that we would also need to meet, so we don't want to take that either. So in summary, the administration would ask the council to reject this cut to the utility operating fund.
Your light went out. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Volkey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, Mr. Trumbauer. I thought, and I may be getting the wrong category because these things are blurring together, but are we increasing the water and wastewater fee in this budget?
So there is an increase in the ratepayer fee of 5% in this year for water and sewer.
So what's happened is DPW has come to us and said, we have to increase this rate because we don't even have enough in terms of solvency in this fund to be able to pay our bills, and this is going to cut more from that.
So it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Okay.
There is a long-term rate model that we do, and that's obviously been shared. And so we need to maintain a certain fund balance. We need to project the revenues and the expenditures. And so that 5% increase is part of the larger strategy to keep this fund solvent. But yes, the utility fund is under a lot of pressure, so any further cuts to this would put more pressure on the fund.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure who is first, Ms. Fiedler or Ms. Hare? Ms. Hare. Oh, wait. You decide.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So you mentioned, Mr. Trumbauer, the new requirements. And I believe, and Madam Auditor can correct me if I'm wrong, but $80,000 for new requirements was included in the requested recommendation.
Yes, but this amendment cuts more than that.
Understand that, but the recommendation that came from the auditor included the $80,000 for the new requirements. So that was considered in the recommended cut.
Well, all I can share with you is that the department has strongly opposed this. They don't want to take the turnover cut, and they don't want to take the additional laboratory services cut. So the Department of Public Works is our steward of the utility fund. I think they're a good steward. They are willing to give good cuts when they're good cuts, and they are strongly opposing this amendment.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I want to talk about turnover for a second, because you just mentioned that you had a model where you average out the turnover. So it's my understanding that the turnover number that's used in the budget for this particular line item is the 3.9%. And I believe Madam Auditor, looking at the last several budgets, notes an average turnover between 7% and 8%. And so this cut would actually only assume a turnover of 5%, which still gives you quite a bit of excess space if the turnover rate is less than that. So I'm trying to figure out where the disconnect is on what you're seeing your model for turnover is and how you came to your number versus what the last few years have looked like.
Okay, so we have a turnover model that we apply to each department. We look at the past years and we project going forward what might be new. And this model, I think, has turned pretty close to reality. I will share that back in another time when I sat where you all did, there was no turnover model, and the council and the administration bickered, frankly, a lot on what turnover numbers should be. I would say over the last couple years, much of that bickering has been eliminated because the budget office has a solid model. So I'm not going to debate the budget office's analysis versus the auditor's analysis. I'm just going to again say that we're comfortable with our turnover number in this, and the department opposes this cut. I just got a notification that Mr. Phipps is coming down. So look at that. This is really just stagecraft at this point. Right, we forgot your entrance music, Chris. I'm sorry, but if I may, Madam Chair, I believe Director Phipps has some comments on this.
That would be fine. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Phipps.
Thank you. Chris Phipps, Director of Public Works. So the contractual services budget does include some new items that I'm not sure how the calculation was done in the auditor's report, but we do have additional testing for what's called contaminants of emerging concern, which we've never had before. So you wouldn't see those in the historic spending, because that's the PFAS materials, that the forever chemicals. So we have to now test for those at 2 of our wastewater plants, Patuxent, Maryland City, the influent, the effluent, and the biosolids. And it's a significant amount. It's like $120,000 just to do that testing and sampling. And then in addition, we have a new requirement this year. It's a $250,000 contract to do what we call local limits studies. So we have to go up into our wastewater collection system and take samples for looking for from a pre-treatment standpoint, where are contaminants entering our system, if at all, from dischargers upstream. And it's a requirement that MDE has to protect the wastewater treatment plants so that we're not receiving things that we can't treat for. So it's called a local limits study, and it's another $250,000 that wasn't in our budget last year. That's a new add-on this year. So not sure how the calculations compare, but those are definitely 2 additional things that we need.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I just wanted to ask one more question on the turnover number. With this model, so do I understand correctly that it's not just a straight average, but it's an average plus some optimism, if we're going to use that word again, on moving forward?
Chris Tromeyer, our budget officer. So it's a model that looks at the past history, but also projects forward based on anything new that may have happened.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Phipps, since you're here, can you speak a little bit about the turnover projection? Mr. Trumbauer has indicated there's this model, you're looking at it, he indicates the department strongly opposes this cut. Can you give us a little background on why you strongly oppose this cut and what you think that you would do with that $485,000 if we don't cut it?
So, that's roughly another 4 positions that we would be short and unable to fill those positions. And a lot of our positions, we see efficiencies in hiring because they may be in a single class, so we can hire multiples on a single advertisement. So I just would I wouldn't want to find ourselves cutting ourselves short when we can hire efficiently and bring on multiple employees at the same time and make a judgment like that when we're talking about wastewater treatment operators, water treatment operators, utility repair workers. I mean, things that we need on a daily basis, and we just can't afford to skimp that program and risk not having all the employees necessary to deliver the services that the public expects.
Go ahead, Mr. Volkey.
Brief follow-up. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Phipps, I don't know if you heard me ask this question. You may have been watching or you may have been running down the stairs. I'm not sure which. But I said to Mr. Trumbauer, you all are increasing the user fee on this fund, this budget. Is that right? I think it's by 5%?
Correct.
Okay. So to the extent that you are noting that you have to increase the user fee to keep this fund solvent, how would a cut like this impact the solvency of the fund on the long term?
Well, what we find with rate increases, if you miss a year or, lose revenue, if you will, it just exasperates the catch-up in the following year. So it's only going to make next year's catch-up even more difficult, if that makes sense. Because and that's one of the things that I think, everybody's looking at this 5%, and it's actually a little less than 5%. I think it's 4.84.
Who's the director and who's the budget guy?
But we haven't had, our rates have really not changed. The last rate increase was actually a rate decrease, and they've been very solvent, and we just try to be very efficient in how we deliver services, and maybe to a fault, because now what's happened with inflation and the worldwide issues we're seeing with supply chain is it hit us hard and it hit us fast, and now we're in I think a an era where rate increases, we have to be very mindful of them and not lose the opportunity we're digging a hole if we don't keep up with these rate increases, and I think it's only going to get worse if we're not, doing truth in budgeting moving forward. We've been very efficient in how we've maintained our rates for a decade, and we need to just keep pace, or we're going to have even higher rate increases in following years. And this is staying within the 5% that is in code that allows us to keep reasonable rates.
Mr. Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment again, after having to do 8 years of budgets with increased rates, and I know that maybe Mr. Phipps doesn't want to say this, I don't think people realize the thousands of water lines and other waste services that have been added because of the increase in our population. We are now the 4th largest in terms of population, and remember, you need to maintain that. So sometimes things cost, and I know that when you look at this from a budget perspective, you want to be conservative and other things, but I also don't want to have a surprise for folks later down the road, and I appreciate that you said that in the sense that we try and maintain and keep it up so that people are paying what they should be paying, especially with inflation and other things. So I think the points that you made are pretty critical, and I won't be supporting this cut. Thank you.
If I just may add, Chris Phipps, Director of Public Works, one other caveat to this or point is utility rates, the revenues don't see the benefit of like a property tax rate that increases just by the increased value of property. The assessed value of property goes up year over year. So without even a rate increase, you're seeing a year over year increase in revenue. We don't get that in utilities. In fact, we've seen in many cases a decline because, and it's good news, people are using more and more water saving devices. So we're not, the only way we can increase the same way is if there's increased usage. But other than that, we have to force a rate increase to get additional revenue, and that's against the tide that Councilman Pruski's talking about, which is increased infrastructure year over year, new pump stations, new underground buried piping, and new regulatory requirements. And then salary increases, just the labor costs and contract costs, chemical costs. These are all going up, and we have to keep pace. And the only way we can do it is by forcing a rate increase. And I think, like I said, for a decade, we really have been very shielded from rate increases. And even this year, it's below the rate of inflation. So that's about all I can say.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Trumbull, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, Mr. Thoreau has come down again based on the council's apparent interest in the turnover model. I think he has some additional comments.
Go ahead, Mr. True.
Steven Saru from the Budget Office. So just based on the previous discussion, I went and actually pulled some numbers this time to come down for you. The last actual was obviously FY21. Personal services, so the object as a whole for the utility fund, had a savings of a little less than $400,000. So some savings. Our turnover model, as Mr. Trump already discussed, we took an additional cut of $450,000. So we took some cut already. So the Budget Office opinion is our turnover model kind of takes that into account. That's why we made an adjustment already, and that this just goes a little too deep based on that analysis.
All right, seeing no additional questions, thank you, Mr. Phipps and Mr. Thoreau, for adding your, providing your input on this. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 44.
Mr. Volkey.
Nay.
Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Nay.
2 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. Amendment number 44 has been defeated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 45.
Amendment number 45, capital budget deletes $500,000 of FY23 bonds.
Again, this is actually, is this one? Nope, this one is both Ms. Fiedler and Ms. Hare. Ms. Fiedler, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So this isn't an outright cut. This is actually just moving to an outlying fiscal year, or forward fiscal year. And the reason behind that is the program description says that the county will share the cost with SHA to construct new sidewalks, but that has not been the case for the last 2 years. So this is just an effort to give the state an opportunity to come to the table.
Thank you. Oh,
Hare, second.
thank you. And Mr. Trumbauer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So after deliberation with our Department of Public Works, we're going to be okay with this one, provided that you pass Amendment 46 on the back end. So this is one of those, we're going to trust you, and please vote yes on 46. How about that?
Thank you. Ms. Pickard?
Well, I'd like to have further conversation about that, as I have a tremendous amount of school construction, and I am very concerned about the community-to-school connectivity and the sidewalks that are going to not fall to the school system and school construction, but they're going to fall to the county to make sure that we have safe walking to the numerous schools that are being constructed and have opening dates as early as next year and the following year. So if you're really telling me that we're going to be able to connect my communities to these schools with the budget at hand, but it makes me nervous. It just makes me nervous.
Understood, Madam Chair. Again, Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So we oppose the original cut that the auditor had suggested on this, but this amendment cuts it in 23, but puts it back in 24. And our understanding from the department is that that will not impact any timing. So this just kind of trues it up based on when the funding will actually be needed.
Mr. Volkey?
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I make a motion, I don't know if this is the right time because 46 hasn't been moved yet, but to block vote the two of these, 45 and 46, so that it allays Mr. Trumbauer's concern that
Well, I trust you guys. You guys will, it'd be silly to cut this and not pass 46.
I'll second Mr. Volkey's motion for the sake of time.
We're already,
You've already motioned and adopted amendment number 45, so.
That's why I said I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if the council is saying publicly, if you're assuring that you're going to vote yes on the following amendment, that could be almost the same thing. That's, not a very technical way of stating it. However, that would be my suggestion. Can I also just say real quick, getting some feedback that some people are quiet when you talk, make sure your mic is more in front of you than to the side. That might help alleviate some of the concerns I'm getting. Thank you.
all right, so we do have a motion and a second, so am I hearing that those are being withdrawn?
Yeah, I withdraw.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Pickard?
If my sidewalks aren't built connecting my schools, I'm coming for you. That's all.
I move to strike the threat off the record, please.
Can I advise Ms. Pickard legally on this?
I think we just all have to, yes, let's just move forward. Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 45.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 45 has been adopted.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 46.
Amendment number 46, capital program, restores bonds of $500,000 in fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024.
And Ms. Fiedler, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. I think this is self-explanatory, and we committed to it just 3 minutes ago. Motion to adopt.
Hare, second.
Thank you. Mr. Trumbauer?
No further comment. Please vote for this.
All right. Seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 46.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 46 has been adopted.
See, we can be trusted. All right. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 47.
Amendment number 47 reduces personal services by $189,000 based on cutting the 3 new positions from purchasing, reduces contractual services by $5,700 for computers and phones related to the new positions, and removes capital outlay of $5,100 for furniture costs related to the new positions.
Thank you. This one is sponsored by Ms. Fiedler, Ms. Hare, and Mr. Volkey. Whichever sponsor would like to make a statement, you may have the floor. Go ahead, Ms. Hare.
I'll take this one. Thank you. Jessica Hare, District 7. These are the 3 new purchasing positions that they discussed with respect to the prevailing wage law that was passed by the council. And to my recollection, during the budget hearings, when asked Central Services kind of how did you come up with those 3 new positions, they said, we didn't really know. It was a little bit of a swag. And so I think, adding 3 new positions without really being able to quantify it is not justified. So at this point, we should be taking those out. Let's see what we actually need before we go in and kind of throw money at it. So with that, I'll move to adopt.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Trumbauer, you may respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just quite simply, the council passed the prevailing wage law. We've got to implement it. We put in the fiscal note that we would need new positions. The department is planning on these new positions, and you can't just not do the law by not hiring the position. So I understand that it was a split vote on the council, but regardless, that is now the law of the land, and the department needs the resources to be able to conduct that program. So we would ask the council to please reject this amendment.
All right, seeing no additional lights from my colleagues, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 47.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Nay.
Ms. Pickard?
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian?
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 47 has been defeated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 48.
Amendment number 48 reduces personal services by $52,000 to remove the new contractual position.
Once again, this is sponsored by Councilwoman Fiedler, Councilwoman Hare, and Councilman Volkey. Whichever would like to have the floor, you may have the floor.
Jessica Hare, District 7. I'll be quick. It's just, the county executive's office has expanded significantly over the last couple of years. This position is really just not necessary. I think the amendment is self-explanatory. I move to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Trumbauer, you may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the administration's position would counter the sponsors. We believe this is for the new equity and diversity and inclusion contractual position. We believe very much that it is necessary. This is going to be working on fair housing and equal opportunity support, also the implementation of anti-discrimination and fair housing laws, and investigations into employee and citizen complaints. So this is part of the EDI program. It is a new program. This is a contractual position to help meet the obligations of that program, and we would ask the council to please reject this.
All right, seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 47.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Nay.
Ms. Pickard?
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian?
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 48 has been defeated.
I'm sorry, that was 48? I'm sorry. All right, moving on. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 49.
Amendment number 49 reduces personal services by $226,000 based on cutting the 3 new positions, 2 new positions from the zoning division, and 1 new position from development. Reduces supplies and materials by $400 based on the elimination of the 2 new positions from the zoning division for office supplies, and reduces capital outlay by $57,400 based on the elimination of the 2 new positions from the zoning division related to their vehicle costs.
All right, thank you. And once again, this is Ms. Fiedler, Ms. Hare, and Mr. Volkey. And I see Ms. Hare's light.
Thank you,
may
Madam.
proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. So when we had the budget hearings, we've heard kind of planning and zoning is sort of chronically run with 7 vacancies in their department, and I think we would do much better as a whole to look at which spots are vacant, how we can better utilize those spots and get them filled, whether that means we need to look at the description of the position, whether we need to look at the pay rank of those positions. But every year we've added positions to planning and zoning, and the vacancies don't ever seem to change or go down. So I really think we need to be better utilizing our vacancies, and 3 new positions are not necessary at this time. So with that, I would move to adopt.
Second.
Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. We'd ask the council to reject this amendment. These are specifically designed to help with the increased caseload that our inspectors are seeing. So, in the past, it's been about 100 per inspector per month. Now we're closer to 175 or 200. The new positions would reduce caseload. We also need the development planner to support the complexity of the caseloads. Everything's getting more complicated now. So we appreciate the concern about the vacancies. Believe me, we're doing everything we can to try and hire those vacancies too. And during the budget process, we work with the department as much as possible to do other actions to help them fill the vacancies. But these are new positions to meet a very specific need. And we'd ask you to keep these positions in planning and zoning, give the department the tools they need to keep things moving. I know for a fact that this council doesn't want things to take any longer than they have to. We have been hearing some complaints about, timing since the pandemic ended, and we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our homeowners and our business community. So please reject this amendment.
Thank you. Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Trumbauer, I'm looking at page 186 of the budget book, which is the Office of Planning and Zoning's performance measures chart. And in there, it notes the number of zoning cases that they're handling, and that's actually gone down since 2020. It notes the number of field inspections, and since what you had in 2021, you are estimating about 600 fewer field inspections. With respect to zoning cases that are opened, I think you're going up from 2021 approximately 75 cases. Zoning cases closed, looks like that's actually increased, which is a good thing in terms of efficiencies. So I guess the question that I have is, you're indicating you need these positions to be able to handle the increased workload that you have, but by Planning and Zoning's own metrics that they've provided us, it looks like they're very clearly indicating they don't have an increased workload. So with that, I'm just trying to understand where the support is for us as a council to agree with you and say, yes, in fact, these positions are necessary, because what Planning and Zoning has provided in the budget books looks like it doesn't support that.
Thank you, Councilmember Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So those are aggregate numbers, obviously, and I'm sure the council is aware there's different inspection programs and all of that. But the facts are that, there are some vacancies in the department right now. We have an aggressive pay package, as you all know. We're looking at a 4.5% COLA and a step this year. We are doing recruitment efforts, and so we expect and we hope that we will get those vacancies filled. But the department itself, they're operating in a different way than they have in the last couple of years. They're getting back up to speed. Those numbers in the budget book are aggregate numbers for everything they're doing, but the director, Mr. Kai Ziegler, is opposed to this. He needs these positions to make sure that his department is structured in the right way and can meet the demands, again, of the business community and our residents. So he's looking to do big improvements in recruitment speed based on the changes that they've made in the recruitment process.
Thank you. Seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please.
Sorry, I'm getting one late night or last minute addition that there's also been increases because of the increased use of the 311 system. So that is something new that is also part of the reason that we need these. Just wanted to get that in there.
Thank you. All right, seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 49.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 49 has been defeated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 50.
Amendment number 50 reduces grants, contributions, and other by $4 million based on aligning the contingency account with previous year's expenditures.
Thank you. This amendment is sponsored by Ms. Fiedler and Ms. Hare. Ms. Hare, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I feel like we put up this amendment almost every year. Just, it's one more year where our contingency spending is dramatically underrunning what was budgeted for. I believe Madam Auditor actually had a slide in her presentation last week on this to show the historicals. So this simply brings it in line to be kind of, what we actually end up going through every year. And I think that that's a much more reasonable way to budget. I'd move the amendment.
Is there a second?
Fiedler, second.
Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Stromeyer, Budget Officer. Usually coming in under budget is a good thing, but I will say that we've been fortunate over the last several years that we have not gotten close to expending the full amount. But I'll remind the council again, one big blizzard would be all it would take, and there's really nowhere else to go and get funding to be able to do that. We do not budget for snowstorms. So in addition to snowstorms, there are other unexpected things that can come up. This is the account where we can get funding. And I'll remind the council again that any appropriation out of here has to come for council approval. So this is something that you guys have complete control over, and we think that this is a very modest amount, frankly, to have in a $2.1 billion budget. So we'd ask you to keep it at $12 million for this year. If we don't spend it, then that's money that becomes available for fund balance, and that's a good thing too. But we don't want to cut our cards too close with this. We'd ask you to keep it at $12 million and reject the amendment.
Thank you. Ms. Lacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was thinking earlier when we voted on the Crownsville Hospital and not knowing what they're going to run into when they start maintaining those pipes and all of that, that $40,000 could easily come out of the CAO contingency. I have no idea how big that number is going to be, but because of that, we've kept it at $12 million for all the years that we've been in council so far. I'm comfortable keeping it there.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a chance to look at the auditor's presentation, particularly slide 8 that deals with the contingency account. And if you look at the amount of the contingency balance that has been retained at the end of the fiscal year that's rolled over to fund balance and you average it, it comes to a balance over those 5 years, 2018 through 2022, of about $2.446 million. So the concern I have with this is that this is too big of a cut because, candidly, I could support something that was about a $2.5 million cut, because that is about average what you're carrying to fund balance. But at a $4 million cut, I think it's too deep, and so I'll be opposing this cut.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Lacy.
Just one more thought on to Mr. Volke's point. We also just went through a bill on Monday night about raising the rainy day percentage, that we could keep, right? And so I think what we're really talking about is an array of potential mechanisms to be able to pay for different things, whether they're emergencies or they're unknowns that we know we expect to be able to need to pay for in the future. We just don't know what they are yet. Whether that means, what I hear from the administration is, okay, $2.5 million, while it might seem reasonable based on the spending, and I don't disagree with you, that it's more difficult to access funds from other places if we were to need an immediate amount of cash, for example, for paying snowplows when that happens. So I think of the CAO contingency fund as almost being more like petty cash, whereas your rainy day fund is your home equity that you don't want to go tap unless it's for something really, major that you're doing, right? So I think it's just a philosophical debate at this point.
Okay.
Thank you. I was actually having no. Thank you. I was having a similar thought about the sort of difference between the CAO contingency and the rainy day fund. One is sort of exactly your sort of more immediate emergencies, but they're almost known emergencies. They're just that, fluctuating costs. If we had a trend where we could say we haven't had a major, multi-million-dollar blizzard in 20 years, then I would say maybe, it would be time to start looking at how to fund this contingency. But then at the same time, I'm going down the philosophical rabbit hole. So I will allow Mr. Volke to go ahead.
But I'll come back to the numbers for a second. One point I will make. In 2020, in that fiscal year, we used the entire CAO contingency fund. There was no balance left. In 2021, we used all but $426,000 of that fund. So we basically used the entirety of the CAO contingency fund in 2 of the last 3 years. It's only in this fiscal year that we're looking at a $4 million balance in that fund. So I think if we look at more recent history as opposed to going even further back to 2018, it skews the numbers even more to suggest that this cut is too big of a cut.
I happen to agree. All right. With that said, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 50.
Mr. Volkey?
Nay.
Mr. Pruski?
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Nay.
Ms. Pickard?
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian?
Nay.
2 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative. Amendment number 50 has been defeated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 51.
Amendment number 51, capital budget, deletes $3,505,000 of FY23 bonds and FY23 pay-go.
Once again, this is Ms. Fiedler and Ms. Hare's amendment. You may have the floor, Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So this cut goes back to a resolution earlier this year, or perhaps it was late last year, the lines always blur between the years, that I did withdraw for Pascal Family Crisis Center. At the time, a lot of the discussion among colleagues was that it really wasn't within the purview of the council at that time to say what should be done with that structure, that building. We did have a private partner at the table who would be able to utilize the existing building, fully cover the cost of renovation, and be able to provide 15 essential mental health beds in our county. I think we are all acutely aware of the mental health crisis and addiction crisis that is still looming in our county. So this cut is because now it's in the council's purview, and if you support a different use that could really fill an incredible need in our county, I ask you to support this amendment and motion to adopt.
Hare, second.
Thank you. Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. We'd ask you to oppose this amendment. This would completely strike the Crownsville Nonprofit Center from the capital budget. And I think that you've heard the county executive explain his vision for this. We also have submitted this as part of the federal expenditure program, and that has moved forward. So we believe that this will be eligible for some federal funding to help support. And if we strike this from the capital budget, it would probably void our chances to get additional funding. As far as our other partners in that area, we value them. We want to continue working with them. I believe that this nonprofit center is a slightly different use and something that's designed to help the whole behavioral health nonprofit community. And so I think that it's going to be a long-term path forward on the larger Crownsville campus. This is actually on property that we already control, along with the other facilities on Community Place. So I think there's room for everybody, and I think we would like to keep this in the budget because I think it will be very impactful for the community going forward.
Mr. Volkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Trumbauer, is this, so I heard Councilwoman Fiedler mention about the resolution previously in the Pascal Crisis Stabilization Center and the space that they were looking to use. Is this the same space that we're talking about?
So Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So this is 41 Community Place. So I believe that is the same space. And again, we value the Pascal Center very much so. We think that what the plans are for this particular facility are a little bit different, but we also, again, looking long-term, are about to take over this very large campus, and I think there will be room for more opportunities going forward. So this is just something we want to do immediately, and we think will help the community going forward. I don't think it should be an either or to put two different uses against each other. I think that there's room for everybody to contribute.
May I ask a follow-up?
Oh, go ahead.
No, okay. Mr. Trumbauer, I guess then my question would be this. In the description in the budget book, this is page 30A in the general county budget book, it talks about renovating 41 Community Place into a new nonprofit center. But if you've got the entirety of Crownsville, do we really need to limit this idea of this nonprofit incubator just to that location? Would it be possible to expand out the description to look at the entirety of the Crownsville property that you're going to have?
Chris Strummer, our budget officer. I mean, we're certainly going to be doing a long-term visioning process with Crownsville campus, and the council and community members and all kinds of people will be part of that, obviously. This particular capital budget item is a specific use for that specific property because we have access to it now. This would allow us to move forward on July 1st. The Office of Central Services has a plan for renovation and to get that outfitted by the end of this upcoming fiscal year, which is aggressive, but it is a priority. Quite frankly, anything that's going to happen on the larger Crownsville campus, I'll be candid, it's going to take a while. We are in very deliberate and thorough discussions with the historical trust and the state DGS and the health department and everything else. I don't know how many of you have toured that property. I have. There are some major concerns. It's going to take a while to get any of those facilities that aren't currently being used up to a level of being able to be operable. So the idea for doing this now on 41 Community Place is it can be done immediately. I think it will have a continuing effect as we do look to outfit some of the appropriate buildings for renovation in the larger Crownsville campus. I think this center could help that effort. But I would be reluctant, I think the administration would be reluctant to try and expand the scope of this particular project at this particular time. Maybe in the future, that's something that we can look at. It certainly sounds like maybe the interests are aligned there, but I would ask the council not to overcomplicate things, but to reject this amendment, and then we can move on to the bigger picture later on.
Mr. Pruski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for the record, the administration can obviously respond to this, but if we have an agreement with a nonprofit that utilizes a county building or facility, there has to be a vote in front of the council for their contractual agreement, whether a lease, sublease, or whatever else. So there is another approval process. I know we talked about a particular vendor and the concern that was raised, but my understanding is if you have a proposal, that's still got to come in front of the council. Am I correct?
Chris Strummer, our budget officer. Yes, there's some thresholds, but major leases for a certain period of time do come before the council for approval.
Thank you.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I think it's any lease that's under 36 months the county executive can enter without county council approval. So it is theoretically possible that this building would get renovated with this money and be leased for a term of 35 months without ever coming back before the council. I think the key piece to remember here is that 41 Community Place is uniquely situated. There's a huge mental health need in the community for those crisis beds. A nonprofit center could much more easily locate elsewhere on the property than necessarily, a linked crisis center that could go there and that could go there quite soon and fill a very big need. And so when we're talking about where do we want to prioritize our dollars and where do we want to put our dollars, building a nonprofit center is great, but it has other places it could go much more easily than some of the beds that are needed right now. So with that, I would ask for everyone's support on this.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. Just to piggyback onto that thought, I just want to remind folks that the building that we're talking about, 41 Community Place, is connected by a breezeway to the facility that does intake of critical mental health patients at the peak of their illness. I would add that if we were to cut this today, this money could be utilized, obviously, in the future. I don't want to get into the details of moving money around, but I just believe that it's in the best purview of our residents in need, the existing facility that's doing an incredible job, and the needs forward to make this cut today.
Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would support this idea on the Crownsville campus. I think the concern that I have is when we talk about efficiencies and good use of government funds and resources and money, I do think there makes some sense to look at the Paschal Center and see why we wouldn't allow them to expand here. My one concern about this is if Central Services goes in and immediately outfits this building and then starts using it as an incubator, I think the worry is obviously that's never going to become an extension of Paschal at that point. It's not going to give us the expansion of those services. And I do think that given the land we're going to get in Crownsville and the opportunities and the money that's going to come in, there's a really good opportunity to do this maybe elsewhere. So I want want to support this idea, but I'm going to support this amendment to cut it because I don't want it to be where it is right now. So to the extent that that makes sense, that's my rationale on my vote.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Tromar, Budget Officer. I think one thing that may be getting lost here is that this nonprofit center will focus on behavioral health. So, I mean, that's why we're putting it here. That's the intent of it. So I think that we're closer than maybe we all think that we are. But I understand that some members of the council would prefer that property to be used for another tenant. But this is what the county exec has put forward, and I think it's a good vision, and I would ask the council to reject this amendment and support the existing plan for 41 Community Place.
Mr. Trumbauer, I have a question I'd like to jump in and ask. If we were to go forward and, leave the money in place for the nonprofit center, and, obviously that 41 Community Place it already needs work, regardless of who's going to become a future tenant. If there are renovations done, and then down the road, there becomes another property available on the Crownsville Center where, the nonprofit incubator could move, would the renovations, I mean, maybe this is a question too far beyond, what you're able to answer, but would the renovations required for the nonprofit prohibit a future use of that space by Paschal if it was ultimately determined that having the connected spaces for Paschal was really the best way, and, the nonprofit also dealing with behavioral health could be, situated in another building? I'm just curious, is that sort of swapping of spaces in the future, is that feasible, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. Chris Tromar, Budget Officer. So what our budget project does is it renovates the building and outfits the building. So that would be done if you reject this amendment. It's currently purposed, the plan is for the nonprofit center, as we've articulated. But regardless, what this funding does is it gets the building up to speed. How that evolves over time, certainly that's a possible future discussion. My understanding from talking to the Central Services Director and others is that the renovations that are included here would basically get the building up to speed, allow it to be used. That use could evolve over time. So I think I see where you're trying to get to. I can't answer that directly as a yes or no, but I can just remind the council that whatever you guys would want to do with the building, we're going to have to fix it up, and that's what this money does. So if we take this out, not only do we jeopardize our federal earmark, but we don't have money to upgrade the building.
Thank you. That was actually helpful. Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Without rehashing last summer's resolution that was actually ended up being withdrawn, we need to remember that we don't get to play real estate agent for nonprofits. Paschal has a lease, a long-term lease for a building, and one of the things that came out of this conversation last summer was the county needs to work on a transparent, fair, and equitable way that it offers nonprofits leases to county surplus buildings, rather than just picking and choosing winners and losers without opening up the floor to individuals that lobby successfully for buildings. There's a lot of folks, nonprofits, that are doing all kinds of good work in this county, both in this service delivery end, as well as others, that would love to have county surplus buildings. So I can't, and I actually like the idea of the nonprofit incubator being there in the behavioral health neighborhood, as we call it. You could call it in that 41 Community Place. So I will reject this amendment.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I just wanted to respond to a couple of quick things. Mr. Trumbauer said that no matter what we do with that building, we're going to have to fix it up. And I just want to point out that that's not necessarily true. When we talk about the realm of public-private partnerships, if a private entity is willing to come in and fix up a building, they bear the cost of that, not the county. So I want to make it clear that, I mean, when Pascal went into 40 Community Place, they paid for the renovations to that building. So it is possible for any other tenant besides the county to come into 41 Community Place and fix up that building. I also, Ms. Pickard mentioned about playing real estate, and nobody's suggesting that you should just automatically give a lease to A, B, or C company, doesn't matter on what. You can certainly open things up to competitive bidding and all sorts of proposals and things that you might want to do and put it out and see who comes back with good ideas. The thought process here being, there was someone with a very good idea. It was not costing the county anything, and instead we're going to spend $3.5 million under this current budget for a nonprofit center that, from an efficiency standpoint, may be better located elsewhere. So from both a budget efficiency, a public-private partnership stance, and a mental health stance, I think there's a number of good reasons to vote in favor of this amendment.
Ms. Lacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a particularly difficult amendment to vote on. It does wrap up several concepts and ideas that we have discussed over the past few years, and different players and different objectives that it's difficult to sort of synthesize them and say, meeting this one set of objectives is also going to help us meet another set of objectives, and then whether or not we can actually do those all in one physical location, approximately one, versus everywhere in the county, because we know that there are mental health needs everywhere in the county. Wherever people live, there are mental health needs. There are also people who need access to inpatient treatment that is just not available all across the county. So I think one of the most productive parts of this discussion is the recognition that we really do need a bigger plan for being able to construct facilities, and who does the construction and who owns them and all of that. Those are issues that have to be addressed at later times. I think I will not vote for this amendment, but I'm very on the fence. I don't think there's anything right now that I could say one way or the other that I think is a better way to go. Other than that, the idea of the incubator, and any kind of incubator, whether it's in a nonprofit mental health, behavioral health kind of space, or a clothing manufacturing, fashion design, right? They have incubators too. They could be applied in any sector. And the most important idea for those, at least in my mind, is the proximity to some resource that allows you to test out your ideas and to work with other people, so that you sort of cross-pollinate your ideas and hopefully come up with something even better. So this is not my favorite thing to be doing with Crownsville, I think. And my vote on this amendment is not a statement on what we should or shouldn't do in other parts of the county. I would like to see us overall commit to the bigger multi-year project and plan in a cohesive way, because I think that's what our residents deserve.
Thank you, Ms. Lacy. I think I just want to sort of piggyback on that thought, is that, as Crownsville is, hopefully going to be in the hands of the county soon. I know there's still a few boxes to check off before that actually happens. Hopefully those will all be checked off smoothly, because I think it really is a wonderful opportunity. I don't know that we're at the point that, or maybe this is something I would assume the county executive's office is working on, sort of a comprehensive plan for Crownsville and how it fits into the bigger picture of all of the needs of the county. So I'm on the same page as you. This is tough, because I like what Pascal does, and they did come forward. But then at the same time, when that resolution was before the council, I almost immediately had and maybe others did too, had other nonprofit leaders coming before and saying, hey, how do I get a free county building to renovate? So, I think it's, I feel like I'm going to put my trust in the county executive's office, because they're the ones that are looking at this from a comprehensive, a comprehensive view, sort of the big picture view of the needs and balancing the needs. I certainly can't imagine pitting, nonprofits, especially behavioral nonprofits, versus, the kind of services that Pascal provides. This is, they're all, we can't have those things competing. There's needs for all of them. So I think figuring out how to balance those is, I'm assuming, and actually, Mr. Trumbauer, if you'd like to comment on my assumption that there is, sort of a comprehensive look at how, we could use the space for Crownsville going forward. I have a little bit of information, but I'm sure you have more.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. Yes, and as the council is no doubt aware, there are a number of current leaseholders on the Crownsville property, the food bank, the Hope House, others such as that. So yes, I mean, there is a comprehensive vision for the property. We will be undertaking a more definitive plan once we actually get the go-ahead to acquire the property. That will, again, be a long-term process. I just want to take the opportunity to say two things. First, I don't want this amendment to turn into a Pascal versus nonprofit center debate, okay? What you have before you is a capital budget item that would fund the Crownsville Nonprofit Center. If this is to vote down, that does not give Pascal the building. That's an entirely different thing. Again, the administration very much values what Pascal does. That hub of nonprofits in that area, including Pascal and Gaudenzia and others, those are performing a very valuable behavioral health service that we support and invest in. So we want to continue partnering with Pascal. We want to continue partnering with all of our partners. But this particular budget item before you is to meet a broader need to help get the nonprofit community serving more people, to help get new initiatives up and running. And we think having it at Crownsville is appropriate location because to some extent now, but certainly we expect in the future, Crownsville is going to be a hub for behavioral health services. It's a campus that county executive has said is a campus of healing in the green heart of our county. So that is the vision of this administration. So we would like you to reject this amendment, allow this to go forward, and then all of the things that you all have brought up about other longer-term ideas and visions going forward, that's a conversation that we are very much wanting to have as well. So I just want to be clear, I don't want this to turn into a this or that, because what you have before you now is allowing the county to renovate 41 Community Place and turn it into what we believe is a very important need of the nonprofit community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 51.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
I just want to explain my vote because of the federal funding and also the plans that for a long-term lease beyond 36 months, I think that we can still go forward with this. So nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 51 has been defeated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 52.
Amendment number 52 reduces personal services by $85,000 for salaries and wages to bring 6 new positions to their applicable starting salary to be consistent with the county's practice of budgeting for new positions and special pays, to remove excess funds based on the support provided. Reduces contractual services by $40,000 for other professional services based on a lack of support to substantiate the increased need. Reduces supplies and materials by $30,900 for building supplies based on removing the female hygiene initiative.
Thank you. Ms. Fiedler, this is your amendment. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. So the impetus for this was really looking at what is being required by the state in our school system and understanding that there's not the same requirement for libraries. The state is requiring by, I believe, 2025 that all female laboratories in the schools, middle and high school, be equipped with dispensers and products. I think it would be more the conservative approach to see the impact on supply demand to the Annapolis pantry within the libraries, within the library system, to first see what the state requirement at the school level does to demand at the library. So I ask for your support and move to adopt.
Hare, second.
Thank you. Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So my understanding of this amendment is it stacks the cuts that we've already agreed to, and then the only new one is the menstrual program that you discussed. And we would ask the council to reject that. The council member is right. We're not doing this because it's a state mandate. We're doing it because we believe it's the right thing to do. The school system is moving forward on providing these products. As I think the council knows, the library system serves in some ways as an extension of our schools. A lot of students go there for study groups or for tutoring or for other services, and we believe it's an appropriate place. It's a community gathering place to also put these products and have them available. So this was a request of our library system to add it in. We believe they made a compelling case. We included it in the budget because we think that this is a good thing to do, not because it is a state mandate.
Thank you. No additional lights. I'll just comment. I know that just from my firsthand experience teaching in the public schools, this is a real, a very real concern. I've had young ladies experiencing poverty, period poverty, and coming to their teachers, coming to our health rooms, needing supplies. And so I think the idea of expanding that to our public libraries is probably a way to help young women be able to extend their time in the library when they choose to. And for that, I will be rejecting this amendment. Seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 52.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 52 has been defeated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 53.
Amendment number 53 reduces personal services by $85,000 for salaries and wages to bring 6 new positions to their applicable starting salary to be consistent with the county's practice of budgeting for new positions and special pays, to remove excess funds based on the support provided. Reduces contractual services by $40,000 for other professional services based on lack of support to substantiate the increased need. Reduces supplies and materials by $15,600 for building supplies based on cutting the female hygiene initiative for family and staff restrooms.
Thank you. Again, this is Ms. Fiedler's amendment. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. Understanding that Amendment 52 was likely not going to pass, I brought this into a very small set of restrooms in the library system, that there would still be the dispensers and products offered in all female restrooms. However, this would remove the 3 family restrooms and staff restrooms. It is my personal belief that if we're talking about a poverty situation, it seems that putting dispensers and products in staff restrooms in the libraries is really more of a convenience issue. I just don't think that it's necessary if there are already dispensers and products offered in the female laboratories. Move to adopt.
Hare, second.
Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We oppose this for the same reasons we opposed the last one.
Mr. Pruski. I certainly understand the, the reasoning that, maybe this is just a convenience for the staff bathrooms, but this also impacts the family bathrooms. And so that might be, I feel like that's a little closer to, the intent of the program overall. So considering how tiny an impact this is on the overall budget, I just can't support it. So I appreciate the thought. So Ms. Lacy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. don't know if any of the women on this council have experienced going into a bathroom and praying that there was a dispenser for a tampon or a pad, and that you also had a quarter, and that the machine wasn't broken because you didn't want to have to use single-ply toilet paper in several layers to put in your underwear to hopefully get through the rest of the hours of your day till you could get home and get a pad. Because there was no other, woman around to ask. You couldn't go ask the administrators. It was embarrassing. I mean, I just think this is a simple thing that makes life easier for some people. I'm happy to support it.
Ms. Fiedler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda Fiedler, District 5. I would just add that all of the libraries that have the family facilities, which is 3, also have a female restroom that would have these products available. So again, this is not removing it entirely from every library building. It's just minimizing where it's offered within the building. Thank you.
Seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 43.
54.
53.
53, sorry, yeah.
53.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Ms. Radvian.
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 53 has been defeated.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 54.
Madam Chair,
Oh, yes.
I'm going to withdraw 54, 55, and 56.
All right. Amendments number 54, 55, and 56 have been withdrawn. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 57.
Amendment number 57. This amendment adds a prohibition against spending any county funds for any program prior to inquiring about the citizenship or immigration status of any person served by the program, and against expending county funds for or on behalf of any person not having lawful citizenship or immigration status.
Mr. Volkey, this is your amendment. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The amendment is self-explanatory. Madam Chair read the description. With that, I would move the amendment.
Is there a second?
Hare, second.
Thank you. Mr. Trumbauer, you have the floor. I'm sorry. Did you have anything else to say? No. Okay. Sorry, you go ahead, Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. The administration opposes this amendment. We can't even imagine the logistics of trying to implement it. County services, when someone comes up to get a COVID test or a vaccination, they're not going to be ID'd to see if they're eligible. If a hungry child comes up for a food program, we're not going to check status. What the county is interested in doing is helping people that need to be helped. We believe that this would create a unnecessary burden on our residents, but also on the county to try and make this happen. So we strongly urge the council to reject it.
I don't see any other lights, but I'd like to just take a moment to comment. I feel like anytime we try and exclude immigrants or any residents of our county based on citizenship or immigration status, we're actually very easily pushing individuals into illegal activity. If we don't support the residents of our county, they are often forced to participate in other ways to support themselves. If people can't get jobs, if people can't get the services they need, they have to go about those, meeting those needs in other ways. And if we are serious about fighting crime in our county, which I actually believe is one shared goal of all 7 members of this council, we need to support all of the residents, regardless of what our opinions are of how they arrived here. We do nothing if we, push people away from the services that can just make people's lives better, because then people are forced to find other ways to make their lives better. So I will be rejecting this amendment. All right, seeing no additional lights, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 57.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Ms. Radvian.
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 57 has been defeated.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we will take a recess to allow
Madam
the...
Chair?
Oh.
There's one more, number 58.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't,
We had an amendment, number 58, come out after, I think it was after 11, so it should be.
All right,
should
very
have- there
good,
we go.
thank you. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 58.
Amendment number 58, capital budget adds qualifying language to the boat ramp development capital project to restrict the use of funds.
Ms. Lacy, this is your amendment. You may have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment is an attempt to assuage the Homeport River Park, I'm probably saying their neighborhood wrong, and anybody else who is concerned that the way that project is described in the budget book gave rise to this idea that the boat ramp development funds could be used for non-motorized boats. And so this is a very simple way to just say you cannot use those funds unless they are for ramps that will benefit trailered boats. And apparently, I'm not a boat owner myself, but I'm told that there's a Maryland boat tax, and that is an easy way to distinguish between the motorized and non-motorized boats and ensure that this project is understood to not apply to facilities, for example, for rowing. They would have to have a separate capital project for that. With that, I move to amend.
Rodvian, second. Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this was, we got this amendment a little late, but were able to communicate with our Rec and Parks Department. The administration would ask you to oppose this. So I understand the sponsor's intent of this, but what this would do in actuality it would remove a lot of the uses that are currently in that boat ramp development project. So right now you can build boat ramps, you can build parking, you can build other amenity things that all support water access. If it's to restrict to only new public boat ramps to the benefit of trailered boats, that would take all of those other uses away. I think that we have, the administration has communicated with the council that there's no plan to build a community boathouse at the Homeport Farm Park facility. In fact, there's deed restrictions on the property that would disallow that anyway. What we do want to do, what the administration does want to do, is provide water access amenities to that park. It might look something like small things, like maybe a boat ramp, a boat rack, or something along that nature. So we don't want to be restricted to only be able to develop boat ramps in this project, because there's many other things that this project supports. And I understand the sponsor's intent related to the Homeport Park in specific, but I think that the administration has been clear that what some in the community are concerned about at that location is not going to happen. So this would be, I think, a too narrow of a restriction on a budget item that the county has historically used to provide a range of water access facilities. And so I would ask you to reject it. If there are other specific questions, I'm happy to address them.
Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jessica Hare, District 7. I just have a quick question. Maybe for the sponsor of the amendment, because my understanding in hearing the testimony from folks about that specific location was concern over a boat house, not necessarily a boat ramp. And so I'm trying to understand, essentially, I don't think they care so much if somebody brings a non-trailered boat to the area, a kayak or something else, to launch into the water. I think it's the specific boat house facility. So I almost wonder if crossing out the word boat house from the description, rather than limiting the all funds to be encumbered only for trailered boats, is maybe that is what you were intending, or am I just misunderstanding?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you. We are prohibited in the charter from changing the description in the budget book as it was submitted to us, right? So this is the only place that we can put any kind of encumbrance or restriction on funds. In my mind, this seemed like a direct way to do that would also cover the issues there, because it would be saying, well, you can't build a boathouse that would be supporting non-motorized boats, and therefore also a ramp, whatever else is in the description. So I thought, well, we're just trying to cleave into the ideas of motorized boat and supports for that, and non-motorized boat. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but I thought it was worth an attempt to at least bring it as a way to address that issue.
I greatly appreciate you looking to address this, ambiguity that seems to be arising in the community. Even though I feel like the administration in Rec and Parks has been clear, it seems to keep coming back. I worry, though, I would like to take this topic up with you in another fashion, maybe in a piece of legislation or resolution. So I appreciate your desire to address this and get it cleared up once and for all. But I worry that, as Mr. Trumbauer said, this may be too broad and actually cut down on types of or actually you said narrow. I'm thinking maybe it's too broad, that it might might prohibit activities that we actually wish to include in the under this boat ramp development, for example. That I know this Homeport Farm Park is that's a beautiful spot for kayaking, and there's already some kayak racks there, and so we wouldn't want to unintentionally limit, improvements that might benefit kayakers, for example. Am I correctly understanding the concern?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. So let me read for you some of the other things that are currently allowed in this project. So facilities may include, but not limited to, entrance roads, parking, dredging, piers, breakwater, shoreline protection, navigational lighting, other related amenities. So, I mean, I hear the sponsor's intent. I'm here again to tell you on the record, the administration is not building a boathouse at Homeport. Maybe that will be helpful to allay the community's continuing concern. But we do want to be able to use this budget object to provide water access facilities beyond just building trailered boat ramps. So I believe this amendment would restrict this budget object to just that, and we don't want to do that. But again, we're happy to work with anyone on the council to to clarify for that particular site. There's going to be no boathouse, and we've said that on the record before, but I'll say it again at this hearing.
Madam Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
I think there's a misunderstanding based on what Mr. Trumbauer just said. This amendment states that funds appropriated in the capital budget for this capital project, boat ramp development, may not be encumbered or expended to fund new public boat ramps, except for the benefit of trailered boats subject to the Maryland boat tax. It has nothing to do with any other amenity that could be covered under the fund. It is restricting public boat ramps to being, if it's a public boat ramp, it has to be for a boat that is subject to the Maryland boat tax.
Okay, let me ask you a follow-up question then, Ms. Lacey, if that's all right. I'm just, because I didn't really have time to, I haven't had time to fully digest this. Would a kayak be subject to the Maryland boat tax? I would assume no.
In my understanding, it is not.
So a boat ramp for kayaks, I mean, I don't know, is that the right language to use for kayaks? I mean, do we even talk about boat ramps for kayaks? Or, I'm sorry, we're getting into definitional things that I just don't have, go ahead, Mr. Trumbauer. You look like you're ready to comment.
So I guess, Madam Chair, Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer, I guess our concern is if we understand the sponsor's intent, it's to clarify and to put in the actual budget bill that there shall be no boathouse or other facility that's not a boat ramp at any facility using these funds. And, okay, so maybe I need to hear you explain it one more time.
Thank you. Madam Chair, if I may. So,
Go ahead.
no, it is not. It is whatever is in the description in the budget book. Take that and add on that funds appropriated in this capital project may not be encumbered or expended to fund new public boat ramps, except boat ramps for the benefit of trailered boats. So those boat ramps could still be built, and everything else could be built. But boat ramps that are for boats other than these trailered boats that are subject to the boat tax. It's just that those ramps can't be built. That's all this amendment would do.
Okay, may I, Madam Chair?
Yes, I
Okay,
think that's fair, since you want to make sure you have a clear position on
I guess
support or oppose here.
I'm trying to understand what boat ramps would not be for the benefit of boats paying the taxes. Is this to restrict it so that there's no kayak launches?
I think primarily, as conceived as a way to resolve the home port debate, it is about not building a crew boat ramp, if that makes sense, for rowers.
So I'm not entirely, Chris Trum, our budget officer, I am not a rower or a crewer, but my understanding is that they don't use a ramp. Is anybody else more adept? I see someone with their light on.
I've been a rower. I used a ramp.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I rode in high school too. We did not use a ramp, but maybe it depends on maybe the type of boat you're. We rode 8s. I don't know.
Okay, well, how about this, if I may, Madam Chair? Now that I better understand the intent, what if I commit on the record that we won't build a crew ramp if that does in fact exist, which I think it may, but I'm not entirely sure, but we won't build that at Homeport. Like, there's no plan, there's no intent to build what I think the community is concerned about. So I'm now even a little bit more worried about this amendment because there seems to be some confusion about what it does. I understand now, thank you, Councilmember Lacey, what you're trying to do. And let me just tell you, if I state on the record, we're not going to do what you don't want us to do, maybe we don't have to entertain this one. Or maybe we can vote on it and see what happens. I don't know.
Ms. Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can't support this. I don't want to pit different kinds of boat users against each other. I know from renting kayaks, there's all kinds of kayak launches that make it a lot easier. I would hate not to be able to put a kayak launch somewhere, because in this, we've changed the language of the scope of this. It seems unnecessary. I think we have decided on the Homeport Farm Park is not getting a row house, so I don't know why we're still talking about it, to be quite honest, but I'm not voting for this amendment.
I definitely still share the concerns, even though I feel like the council and the administration have made it clear again and again that there will not be a boathouse at Homeport Farm for no reason other than there are very clear deed restrictions about what can go at Homeport Farm. And I think the general interpretation that I've heard of those deed restrictions would not include a boathouse. So I don't, unfortunately, this misunderstanding or rumor or whatever continues to linger. So I definitely appreciate the intent. My concern is I am just not familiar with what all types of boats are included in the category of trailered boats. And I worry that we actually, saying that we could build ramps for trailered boats, but we're not going to build any ramp for non-trailered boats. I think I'd feel more comfortable if I saw a list. And so I think I appreciate the intent of wanting to address this issue once and for all, but I think I would like to vote this down just because there's too many questions in my mind about what exactly, what falls in what category and what limitations this puts. And I don't want to put limitations that we don't actually want, if that makes sense. So I greatly appreciate it, and I would love to continue to work with the sponsor on this issue because it doesn't seem to go away despite the number of times we seem to make statements that there will be no boathouse at Homeport Farm Park. So with that, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 58.
Mr. Volke is absent. Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler.
Nay.
Ms. Hare.
Nay.
Ms. Lacey.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Nay.
Ms. Radvian.
Nay.
1 in the affirmative, 5 in the negative, and we do have 1 absent council member. Amendment number 58 has been defeated.
Thank you. All right, now, at this time, we will be momentarily taking a recess to allow the administration time to prepare their supplemental budget. But I would like to find out, before we actually call that recess, how much time do you believe the administration needs, Mr. Trumbauer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Right now, I'm suggesting that we reconvene at, let's say, 7:30 PM. Would that work for you? No. All right, I just want to see if you were paying attention. Would an hour be too long? I mean, could we do it 2? It gives us a little bit of a break, and then I'll go fast, I promise.
That sounds great to me, because we can eat and digest and talk about boathouses.
2 o'clock? Okay.
Or not boathouses.
I will be down here by 2 and
Sounds
ready to introduce the administration supplemental. Thank you for the good work of this morning, and we'll see you in about an hour.
All right, the County Council stands in recess until 2 p.m. We'll see you in an hour. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The July 9th, 2022 meeting of the Anne Arundel County has now reconvened. At this time, our budget officer will present the supplemental budget. Welcome again, Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Trumbauer, Budget Officer. Thank you again for your good work earlier today. On behalf of County Executive Pittman, I'm pleased to submit to you the county's supplemental budget. Now you have, I believe, a letter in front of you that's 7 pages, and I can do this 2 ways. I can run through everything, or I can give you the highlights, and I will defer to the council's wishes.
I'm hearing whispers of highlights. Highlights. Everything. So let's go for the highlights. Everything.
Okay, so I will just confess that most of this letter contains what I would say errors, omissions, and technical changes, and they're all detailed so the council can read through those. But what I'm going to concentrate my remarks on are new things that we are proposing to add to the budget. So those are listed as supplemental requests. For the operating budget, those start on page 2. So I'm just going to go through these one by one and explain a line on each. First, we're going to add $2 million of one-time funding to give to our friends at the community college, and this will be for one-time salary enhancements when they looked at their employees versus the county employee bargaining units this year. They thought that there was a little inequity, so we work with them to try and provide some more funding for their faculty, staff, and adjunct positions. Under Office of the Sheriff, we, at the council's request, are going to add 5 additional vehicles for the sheriff, and of course that has a recurring component for lease, operating, and operational costs, as well as the one-time capital outlay. So that's $58,500 for the recurring and $279,000 for one-time funding. For our friends in the library system, again, at the council's request, we're going to add 1 additional position at $61,100. This is a new cybersecurity position, which I'm sure you remember Mr. Ald advocating for. In the Department of Rec and Parks, we're doing a couple things there. It will all told increase their appropriation by $74,300. So that adds a Rec and Parks facility superintendent position, and then it converts a one-time contractual supervisor from part-time to full-time, and then there's a reclass of a secretary 3 to office support specialist. For the fire department, again, at the council's request, we're going to add 4 positions as fire communications operators. This will allow them to hire an additional shift at the call center. And one other thing I'll note on the operating budget is we are adding some additional ARP, America Rescue Plan funding grants. Those are detailed to you in a table on page 3, but I'll roll through them really quickly. There's $2.2 million in for a FY23 new hire and retention bonus for the school bus drivers. There is $132,000 for 6 additional grants to the community support grant program, $312,000 for hiring and retention bonuses for our crossing guards for next year. And then there's a $2,000 Community Foundation grant in Rec and Parks, and a $37,000 state pass-through grant for the Shadyside Community Center there as well. Getting back to ARP, we have Brooklyn Park Healthy Food Pantry program. That's a continuation for fiscal '23. That's $165,800. And then in our health department, they got a additional grant of $249,000 for local infrastructure. They also have an EPRA grant of $40,000 and a $60,000 donation from the Care First Healthy AA Coalition that we're acknowledging. And then finally, from the Department of Health, they got $323,500 going from the State Department of Health to our local Department of Health. Okay, if we move on, and then again, all the rest are technicalities and omissions. If the council has any questions, I'm happy to address them, but they're not very exciting. If we move on to the capital budget, there's really, there's a lot of funding swaps here, and again, they're detailed, but we're acknowledging some additional grants we got, and then some swap outs of PAYGO and impact fees and other funding sources. But the things that I wanted to highlight to you in particular basically start on page 6. Again, with our friends in the Rec and Parks Department, they're acknowledging a number of additional state grants that we're putting in that were not quite known or ready for prime time when we introduced the budget, but these are for Crownsville Memorial Park, London Town parking lot, and in the park reno object. And then we're adding in the Roads and Bridges project plan $150,000 of PAYGO, and this will be a feasibility study for Bruce Avenue in Odenton. Pretty much everything else is either a grant acknowledgement or a funding swap. And then what this brings us to finally is about $725,400 in recurring and $2,279,000 in one time. So this pretty much breaks even from all the actions that we took today. We're still well within all of our affordability guidelines, and I'm happy to report that after today's action, we are maintaining a structural surplus of approximately $50,000. So I know that's been a concern of the council in the past. Again, I'll reiterate, there's no structural deficit, and we're actually $50,000 to the good in this entire budget. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing you on Tuesday as the council will entertain these amendments and hopefully strike the final budget.
Thank you very much. At this time, I guess, are any questions right now? All right, seeing no lights, we'll move on, and thank you very much.
For the record, can I just note that it's still light outside, and that's kind of extraordinary. So I want to take a moment, again, to thank the council and the auditor and council staff and my budget team for the cooperation in this process. I know that there's plenty of room for policy debates and disagreements, but I think at least we all worked well together this year, and no one has ever seen a adjournment, this early in the day. So I think that speaks well for the process this year. So thanks to you all.
And thank you to you and Madam Auditor. All right, at this time, we have a special motion. Under Section 60, I can't read numbers today. 7, under Section 709 of the Charter for Anne Arundel County, if the county executive proposes amendments to the budget so as to increase items in the budget or add items to the budget, the county council must give reasonable public notice of the proposed amendments and hold a public hearing on the amendments, provided that the county council may waive the requirement for a public hearing by a vote of 5 members. May I have a motion to waive the public hearing required by Section 709 of the Charter?
Lacey, so moved.
Is there a second?
Allison Pickard, second.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Volkey is absent. Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Nay.
Ms. Hare?
Nay.
Ms. Lacey?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
That's 1 absent, 4 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative. The motion to waive the public hearing has been defeated.
All right. So the motion to waive the public hearing required by Section 709 of the Charter has failed. So public notice of the supplemental budget will be given. Copies of the amendments will be posted on the county website. Please check the council's website for ways to submit testimony on the supplemental budget. The public hearing will be held during the virtual meeting that's already scheduled to begin at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, and any public testimony received will be posted before the meeting begins. Upon the conclusion of the public hearing, the council will vote on the supplemental amendments to the budget and vote finally on bills number 37-22 through 48-22. Is there any additional business to be brought before the county council at this time? May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Councilman Persky.
Is there a second?
Second, Allison Pickard.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. The county council is adjourned until 9 a.m. on Tuesday, June 14th, 2022, when we will meet in person in the, whoops. Okay, the other item just said virtual. Are we virtual or in person on Tuesday? We're in person?
I'm sorry, that must be a typo. We are in person on Tuesday, June the 14th, beginning at 9 a.m.
Okay, that sounds good. Just want to clarify, in person, right here in the chambers, and we will be voting on the amended FY23 budget and hold that public hearing. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.